and welcome to GenFriends. I'm your host, Cheri Hudson Passey from Carolina Girl Genealogy, and I have a fabulous panel, as always. I've got Mary Kircher Roddy from MKR Genealogy. Hello, Mary.
Hi there.
Good to have you here with your beautiful quilt. I'm always excited to see which quilt you're going to have behind you, because we never know. You do so many. You're so good at it. Yeah.
I want that book.
Yeah. We've got Shelley Murphy, our family tree girl. Hey, Shelley.
Hi there.
And of course, it's beautiful behind you too with those Blue Ridge Mountains, right?
Thank you. and my sweater.
And your sweater.
Pops in every once in a while.
And Laura Hedgecock from Treasure Chest of Memories. Hi, Laura.
Hi. I don't really have anything beautiful, but well, I guess I have a piece of art on the wall.
There you go. It's
beautiful.
Gorgeous. And just popping in at the nick of time, straight from a webinar.
Yes.
Melissa Parker, the archive lady. Hello, you made it. We just hit record. You're great.
Yes.
So, I'm glad that you're here. This is going to be a great discussion tonight. We are going to be talking about Who Do You Think You Are? They come back on NBC at 7 o'clock on Sunday nights with season 11. We're going to be talking about episodes 3 and 4, and they're both actors. We've got Allison Janney, and we had, got to make sure I say these names right, and we had Zachary Levi, both well known. Both had fabulous stories about their ancestors, some not so good and some unbelievable, the things that they learned. Let's start. I want to start with Allison Janney because she got to go to Bermuda. And when I was a kid, my dad was in the Air Force, so I lived in Bermuda for 3 years when I was a kid. So I was like, oh, I mean, I remember, I know I was little, but I remember a lot of it. But I thought that was fabulous. She got.
Wait, when I was married, I didn't go to Bermuda when we were in the Air Force.
Yeah, my dad was in the Air Force for 20 years. We didn't go to Bermuda.
No, we went to Hawaii, you know, in Mississippi, Texas, California.
No Bermuda.
No.
So what was really fun though, as we're watching these shows, is some of us know some of the people that work for Ancestry. And so Joseph Shumway was the one that showed her tree. And I don't know, I've met him. So that was really cool to see somebody on TV that I've met before. That was really fun. And so they started the tree for her. It was interesting because with most of them, they have relatives kind of tell them some of the story. And in this case, they didn't. They just went straight to the tree and straight to her. Gosh, how many generations back? It was like her 12 great
grandparents.
Yeah. And so that's why they sent her to Bermuda. But the interesting side story is, anybody want to talk about what happened to where her grandmother died? Her grandmother actually died in Bermuda.
Bermuda.
So they never, so they used to go there all the time.
And they didn't know the connection.
They didn't know they had
any
connection to Bermuda.
Yeah, it was just a vacation for them.
And you know, I wonder if she knew. I wonder if her grandmother knew that.
And maybe
the granddaughter never knew of it. It was never passed on.
Yeah, it could be, you know. So that was interesting. So so she went to the National Museum to find out more. Does anybody want to take off with that story, what she learned in Bermuda?
All I want to say, must have been a heck of a hurricane or whatever that was. Happened in 1609.
Her ancestors. Yeah.
So basically, she found out her ancestor was headed for Virginia, but there was a hurricane and they ended up shipwrecked on Bermuda. And then, so it was kind of like martial law, but it was like captain's law. They were supposed to be still under the power or the
the governor, the man who's going to be governor was actually on that ship. And so he just decided that he was going to just still stay in control. But there's a little bit of a mutiny going on because they said, wait a second, we're not under British rule. We're not under any rule. We're our own rule. We are the people of Bermuda. Because there was nobody there, you know, they could eat, they ate well with fish and the fruits, and I mean, it's beautiful, you know, and that would have been fun to see it all deserted because, you know, when I lived there, was tons of people, and I'm sure it's even worse now. I've not been back since I was 9, so I'm sure it looks a lot different now. and I'm trying to remember the name of her ancestor. Oh, Stephen Hopkins. Stephen Hopkins. That's right.
And I only know him Mayflower in once it gets to that point.
So he's cool because he didn't die in the shipwreck. And they were going to kill him for treason. They brought him up on charges because he was the one that was leading this, we don't have to follow the captain. We can make our own rules. And they said that he was actually the clerk to the clergyman that was on board. And so everybody really respected him. And so they pled for his life and he wasn't killed. So there's 2 times he didn't die. So
I mean, you got to give it to that guy.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how old he was when he was, coming in the 1609 and the shipwreck.
Wasn't he in his 20s?
Yeah, I think he was in his 20s because he was married and had children at that point, but he'd left them behind so he could come. And I guess, like a lot of people would do, they would come and then go get their families later once they were settled. So
come and get settled.
So they decided after about 10 months to take the parts of the ship that was shipwrecked and build 2 smaller ships and head for Jamestown.
Can you imagine the bravery it would take to get on those ships after you were shipwrecked?
Yes. Yeah.
And we're thinking 21st century.
Exactly.
And we're talking about 17.
Yeah. And they said that pretty much everybody just thought that ship had sunk and they didn't realize that so nobody was coming to look for them because they had no idea that they would have been shipwrecked. I mean, what are the odds when you're in the middle of the ocean? What were the odds that they would get blown to Bermuda and not just sink?
And they were only, it was like a week or something, a small number of days that they would have made it to Virginia.
Right.
So
but that
it sailed all the way across the ocean and just missed it and then got blown off.
Yeah, got blown off course. Yeah, they got in that Bermuda Triangle, but they made it.
I'm wondering, nobody got swept through the triangle and still. I don't even know if it was even identified. Well, of course it wasn't identified back then.
What I thought was interesting was then she leaves Bermuda, but before she left Bermuda, she saw the plaque. So they'd set up a plaque because that shipwreck is what was the beginning of the British starting to come and colonize Bermuda. So they had this plaque and had his name on it. So how cool is that?
That's
a plaque
cool.
like that with your ancestor's name. So she's touching the plaques and tell them, oh, thank you. And that was really sweet. So then she hops on another plane and she goes to Jamestown. And that was interesting too, because fort was there. Anybody want to take off and talk about the conditions that her ancestor would have found when that ship got there? In other words, they should have stayed in Bermuda. What was going on?
She met with James Horn, if I remember correctly, from Jamestown. The foundation he has a few books. He's a known author. But I think it's James Horn is who she met, and he talked about the conditions.
Yes, they were terrible.
Barbarism.
They were
bad. It was bad.
It was bad.
It was like had been besieged, and they were in their little fort, barely surviving on a few rations that were left.
Right. They were skeletal. It said the people were skeletal.
Yeah, it was bad.
Sad. Yeah, really, and some cannibalism going on and things like that.
And that only came out a few years ago, you guys.
Yeah.
And what did they say over? There was like 400 men that were there originally, and we're down to like 60. I mean, that's
it was bad.
Because they would just go, see, we're getting on the boat. We're not stopping. We're heading out of Dodge. Let's go find someplace else. But they didn't. Things kind of turned around, and and so they stayed.
Didn't they meet a ship that they were on their way out, and they met a ship that had provisions? So it was like, okay, we don't have to leave.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
of course they didn't know anything either as far as like the soil and this, that, and other.
Because that is not where they originally were going to be. I think even the whole group of, I'm not sure. Is that right? I'm thinking about the Mayflower.
No, I think the Mayflower was somewhere else.
Someplace else. So that's third time he makes it through. he makes it through all this crazy stuff going on in Jamestown. And then he receives information that his wife has died in England. So, and that was interesting too, because of COVID, I bet you if it wasn't COVID, she would have been able to go to England. That would have been their next step. Let's go back to England and see what happened to his wife and his children. But they couldn't do that because of COVID and the rules and regulations of flying and all that kind of stuff and COVID. So that's, I'm assuming that she didn't go.
Okay, so when you just said that, I'm thinking, okay, his wife died because of COVID. Is kind of
I'm sitting here calculating the COVID is 1610 or whatever.
She didn't get to go back to England to look at the record. But what they did is they emailed her documents, and they emailed her a document of his wife dying. And then and that would have left his daughter at age 6 with no parents.
Right.
So he gets on another boat.
So he gets on another boat. Who gets on another boat? But I guess that's just your life, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's
just your life
Got
at
it.
times.
And he had a daughter and a son, which wasn't really clear when they first started telling us the story.
Yeah.
So, he's got 2 kids, and he's going to go back for him.
So
and then he comes back on Mayflower.
He
comes back here.
Yeah, he came back, he got married, and then brought the new wife, his children, it said, from his previous marriage, and then he'd had children with her, and so they all came. So then he comes and it's the Mayflower.
Yeah. And then I thought to myself, if you had just only found the Mayflower information, look what all you would have missed, because you would not have known to go look for that. How would you know to go look for all that?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I knew about Stephen Hopkins' Mayflower, but knew nothing prior. So just exactly what you said, this whole thing with Bermuda is like wait a minute.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought he just came to, like everybody else, the 102 people, with the Mayflower and stuff.
Right.
No.
So how is you as a genealogist, and those of us here are pretty seasoned genealogists, if you had only come across the Mayflower information, where would you go to have found the other? I don't know which came first.
England.
I don't know if they found the Mayflower stuff. I would love to know how the researchers, what they found first, second, third.
Yeah, that's a good.
England would have been the first track though, because that's where he came from.
Exactly.
And then something might have keyed off to get the Bermuda, or researching more on. You'd have to jump. You got to get the 1609. It has to go back to England.
Remember when she met with Joseph Shumway, he found that first document in a source that was talking about, I guess, people coming from England to the United States. I can't remember the name of it, but I don't know in their research when they found that, but that's what he showed her first, was that record of him.
They signed the pack. I don't know if anything, because that was the first on the ship.
Right. That was the first Bermuda that he showed her. And so that's why she went to Bermuda first. But I don't know if that's what they actually found first. Laura.
Yeah, I suspect so. The Mayflower, what do you call them? Not inhabitants. The people that sailed on the Mayflower have been highly, highly, highly researched. So I'm sure they weren't having to break ground there. That anybody that was on the Mayflower
I don't know.
Because my husband has we haven't certified it, a Mayflower descent, and it's just so easy to find things on him. And he was just a servant, which normally if someone isn't prestigious or rich or whatever, it's a lot harder to find that information.
Oh, that's so true.
Mine was the Cooper. One of them is the Cooper, Alden and Priscilla.
My husband's is George Soule.
Cool. I got nobody, at least as far as I know so far. I got nobody on the Mayflower. What I thought was interesting though were the lessons learned. They didn't get off the Mayflower, and I think we all know this, but it makes you wonder,
signed that back
until they signed it, and it makes you wonder if he, or maybe if anybody else had a similar, or just had traveled somewhere, and they were saying, wait a minute, this is what happens when you get off the boat. This is what happened to me in Bermuda. We don't want that to happen. So let's deal with this before we even get off the boat. So
I wondered that too, like if that experience really, and then the other thing that made me wonder, or I found interesting, is in later years, sending someone to Bermuda was a punishment, like that people were deported from England to Bermuda. Like it was some terrible place. But actually, the way these guys described it, it was wonderful.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. So, yeah. So I just think how interesting is that she gets to see him in so many, he was part of 3 of the major events that
this
happened,
country.
you
Yeah.
know, for 2 for this country and 1, you know, Bermuda. So for 3 for the British, you know, when you think of Bermuda and Jamestown and then the Mayflower coming, you know, that who finds things like that? I think that was just amazing. And she was just in awe. But the coolest thing was the hat, because they had,
I love the hat.
One of my favorite record types of all time are the inventories in a probate record. I love them because you read through them and you learn all about your ancestors' life, what they were doing. You don't know what if you don't know what their occupation is, find an inventory. What kind of tools do they have? Do they have musical instruments? You know, did they sing? I mean, you find all sorts of great information in an inventory. And in this case, one of them was a hat. And they had a hat that had been passed down through the generations. I mean, I don't know that they can say this was specifically his hat, but it
wasn't his, it was from another descendant of someone else.
Well, it came through his daughter. It came through his daughter. Yeah. So, I mean, it didn't have his name stitched in it. So, and they said, and she was talking about how she was a hat person. And if you noticed in most of the scenes, she was wearing some kind of hat. Yeah. And so, they said,
but when she pulled that off, I said, oh my God, look at the hat.
They told her if it wasn't 400 years old, maybe they'd let her try it on. But I'll bet you, I wonder if they're worried if they even tried to pick it up, if it would fall apart. I wonder what condition it's really in. So, but you notice it was by a window.
Wool?
Yeah, probably. I would think so. And they pulled that little drape thingy they had over it, and it was right by a window. I'm thinking to myself, I'll bet you that thing is not normally right there by that window.
No.
Because the sunlight, you catch that. I thought, they probably pushed that case over there for, you know, filming ease.
Yeah.
Because you can't have something like that with daylight.
No.
You know? Even if it's covered heat and
they keep it in. I'm guaranteeing you, they keep it in a back room in the dark, and
probably
not even that kind of a case.
Melissa's probably looking at that going,
no.
But if I ever get up there, I'm gonna go look at that hat.
Now that we know the story, and more than just he wore it, you know, after he got there on the Mayflower, that, you know, there's so much more to the story. Maybe he wore it in Bermuda. We don't know. So now if he went through a shipwreck in Bermuda, I'm wondering, you know, I'm sure he got that afterwards. They probably had no possessions much left, you know, after a shipwreck. So they're lucky they still had parts of a ship to be able to build
another one. Yeah.
And be able to have enough knowledge. But then again, these were seafaring people, you know, they were used to that, to get to the right place to find James.
It's like stuff you see on TV, the story, the whole thing, which is like something we would have saw on TV.
It was like MacGyver. We'll just
like a MacGyver. There you go. Mary.
I sailed on the tall ship Bounty, and there was a carpenter, you know, a permanent position on board that ship. So they would not have left. A wooden ship was not going to leave port without a carpenter.
Right. Wow. That's good. That's good to know. Thank you.
It is.
That was such a good episode. I
enjoyed that one.
It was good. And just amazing for her. So I felt good for her, because it was like, why didn't I know any of this stuff? You know, thinking of that. And we all come across that, and why did I ever hear? Why didn't grandma say something, or grandpa or somebody?
Yeah, things just don't get passed down. Well, the next episode was the one with Zachary Levi, and he kind of had they did both sides of his family. His maternal side was not so good. And he talked about the fact that they had a lot of abuse through the generations, and that he and his siblings had determined that they were going to put a stop to it. And then one of the reasons he wanted to go on this journey was to kind of see where it was coming from and what was going on. So That was very interesting. He remembered that his own grandmother was very
Alcohol and abuse.
a very rough person, and
Childhood
and it
stuff.
had to have been learned behavior,
Yeah.
from the generations. And you find that unless it's a beginning of some kind of mental illness, a lot of times the alcoholism and the abuse are learned behaviors from generations before, and
Absolutely.
they just didn't get stopped. So anybody want to start with the story of the great grandfather and the girl that they found in the
15-year-old?
Go ahead, Mary.
Well,
you gonna-
yeah, he had, they found a newspaper article that a girl, I think her family was bringing suit against him
Mhm.
because, apparently he had toyed with her virtue, said he'd marry her, did not marry her. And so there was more to it that they didn't really understand. He got her in a delicate condition. And she was given some medicine. He induced her to take some medicine,
Yeah.
and it was just all very vague until he went and talked to the
Researcher.
a researcher with a very specific area, and I forget
He
what
was
they
a,
call it. It was
wasn't he
basic-
not a, he was a sexual historian,
yeah,
something like that, or
Which is-
professor
yeah.
or something like
It
that.
was
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Oh, see, I missed that.
Yeah, and when they put his name up there, it
On
listed.
the bottom, yeah.
yeah, they had his field, but yeah, it was in sexual
Mhm.
reproductive history
Yeah.
or something.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
I
wow.
thought that was very, very interesting.
Mhm.
Right.
I don't know about you, but was everybody else talking to your TV, telling him what this was?
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
I'm
I
like,
messaged you guys
you don't know
last
what
night.
this is?
I know, and I agree. It was like,
Okay, you guys, they're so much younger than us. I mean,
that's what?
That's true.
I
You're
got-
right.
I mean, that whole delicate thing, I mean, we probably learned that from our parents, but I think the younger people today, I mean, everybody's so open about everything and there's no
Yeah.
secrets. And they're
It
like,
could
what?
be. That's a good point.
That means she was knocked up? What? I don't know. I actually love Zachary Levi. I'm one of the Chuck fans. I am totally biased. I thought it was funny that they didn't know, but I didn't really think it was too surprising. To be like,
Mhm.
this language was so foreign to them. They gave him some liquid, and then they were contemplating, was he trying to kill her? And I was like, not her.
Or
Not
aborted
her.
her.
Not
Not immediately.
Although,
with-
the whole
Yeah.
process could have
Quinine
killed her,
tablet.
but.
Yeah, that's true. The whole process.
And did anybody else, and I don't know, Mary, if you did this, if you performed your Mary on it or not, but what happened to the 15-year-old girl?
Yeah, I know. They never.
and I
They
did
didn't
not
say
get around to that.
anything.
Yeah.
Oh, and they said they couldn't get back any further than, I can't remember the record, but they didn't get back that far on the Shanks. And I
No,
was
they
wondering if
didn't.
you
And-
had married that.
I worked on it some, but I didn't get to it till late this afternoon. So
We forgive you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I pulled some of the records and I was looking at some of the records because
Yeah.
I have Shanks in my
Oh.
family.
Oh,
My
Very good.
Great grandmother, Wilhelmina Rosina Augusta Fruhoff.
Wow.
oh goodness, that's a
Just-
name.
I love that.
And it just trips off your
I
tongue.
know.
She had two sisters, Mary and Pauline, who for some reason became Carolyn when she got to the US, but that's a whole nother mystery. But Mary and Caroline both married brothers, Shank
Shank
brothers,
brothers?
John and Anthony. And I've been doing a lot of research on them recently with
Mary's
DNA
on the
matches.
hunt now, you
Yeah.
guys.
And they were in Illinois, those Shanks. So I'm not sure. I was kind of trying to look at maybe where my Shanks were from and if there might be a connection, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I actually spent some time with German newspapers because there are a lot of German newspapers in St. Louis. And I'm
Oh,
thinking there might not have been anything in the American papers, maybe about where he came from in Germany. They might have just said he came from Germany, but the people who read the German newspapers would recognize the names of those places.
Right.
Oh,
And
true.
so that was my thought, that I might find a location for him there. but I wasn't able to spend a ton of time. I had to do accounting work today, so
Oh, darn.
The real job.
yeah.
A real job. Well, it's unfortunate because that's not the only, male in his line that he said he was very disappointed in the male. In his
generational.
Yeah, it's a generational thing. And one of them was, it had to do with a pension from one of his Civil War soldier ancestors in that same line. And he was in a soldier's home, which is, a lot of the soldiers would get hurt and they'd be placed in soldiers' homes. So if you've got Civil War ancestors for the North, they didn't put you in there. You're from the South, unless the city itself had one. But we're talking about the Union soldiers' homes who would take care of them. But I guess he was eligible for a pension, and his wife wrote and said, "Hey, I need some of that pension money." And then he wrote back and said, "Don't give her that money," and called her all sorts of names and said that she was hanging out with terrible people and on and on and on and on.
Orgies even.
There was
Orgies even. And so
I saw.
I know. I'm thinking. And so then they went to investigate her, though, and found that that was not true.
This is a very good lesson for genealogists to not take the one side of the story.
Exactly.
The phrase that our school principal used to say, no matter how thin, there's always two sides to the pancake.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
Right. Children testified for and said, no, he was abusive. And,
and I believe their side more because of the detail that they gave and the way that they kind of explained it and stuff. Yes. And so I because you have to, it's kind of like being an investigator like we are as genealogists. And you look at both stories and you have to decide, well, which one is true?
Which one is true? Well, and she also had neighbors. She had people that were on her side as well. And so that helped when a community, Laura.
Oh, I was just going to say, what I thought was interesting at the National Archives is they got to touch the original pension file. But most of us who are not celebrities, if that
we have to wear gloves.
Well, no, we don't get to look at it.
Well, if it has been digitized, you only get to see the digitized version, because they're preserving those original documents.
They don't bring them out unless you can prove that it's not readable, how they digitized it. Then they'll bring it.
I got to digitize one of my husband's ancestors and use the Discovery Hub and take that original file. Yeah. And so if you look on the National Archives, my name's there from.
That's so cool. But she's got a good point. So if people are watching this and thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to go to the archives, the National Archives, and I am going to see my ancestors' pension, you're not most likely not going to be able to get it because they're like Laura said, they have digitized them and they're trying to preserve them. I have been there and seen them tell people, I'm sorry.
But why did I get a box and I'm opening it up and going through a whole bunch of them?
There's a lot that haven't been digitized.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But again, I'm also talking about pre-COVID would have been.
I went pre-COVID, but it wasn't that long pre-COVID. I'm thinking a couple of years. And everything that I was looking for had been digitized.
Yeah.
So I was there last month or in June.
Yeah, you were just there.
Yeah, and got originals.
That's great.
Working with originals
because they hadn't been digitized. Well, the last time I was there, it was maybe 2019. I'm trying to think. I was there for a conference. I was there for a conference and went. And this poor woman, she kept filling out her paperwork to get these pension, and they'd come back and they'd explain to her, this has been digitized. I'm sorry, we can't. And she would do it over and over. And I know she was getting frustrated, and the people there
didn't know what that was, maybe.
Yeah, trying to explain to her, you can't see these originals. And she was getting so frustrated. There must have been 3 or 4 times in a row. I felt so sorry for her. And people were trying to explain it to her, but so just know that if you go and they've been digitized, unless you can prove, if you can prove and show them that you cannot read that original, then they'll bring you the original. But other than that,
if you can't read the digitized.
If you can't read, sorry, thank you, Laura. If you can't read that digitized one, they will bring you the original.
Okay,
And
so
then
this is the whole
digitize it.
piece about what we're doing here, and that we're talking about this TV show that was sponsored by
Yes.
Ancestry.
Yes.
And that's a record. I mean, you asked me if I married these people
Yeah.
and did
Yeah.
my business looking for them. And I wanted that pension file.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Oh, was she the lady?
Ancestry
Yeah,
digitize
Mary.
it and put it out there so I can find it.
Exactly.
Because obviously they looked at it and I want to see it. I could have made some headway.
You could have. You
I'm
could have.
sure of it.
She was the lady.
Do you know, I noticed several times though, they would say to either one of them, and this is the source. And I'm like, oh, that's good. I'm glad you're saying that. This is the source, whether it was a manuscript, the original document, a digitized version of a document. They kept saying, and this is the source where we're getting our information. I thought, oh, that's good. We're getting that in the vocabulary of maybe non-genealogists that are just learning and that are just watching the show. So I appreciated that they're using that word source. This is where this information is coming from, and not just because grandma told me, right? So that's the actual source. So
Okay, can we talk about, I thought it was interesting that he used the word lineage, which we traditionally think of meaning blood, but he was talking about generational trauma. And so it was really more nurture than nature.
Yeah.
And the number of generations he's talking about it being passed down. So he's going back to a Civil War pension to see behavior that had been repeated generation after generation after generation. So I thought that was really interesting that his was the first generation that said, let's break the chain.
Yeah.
Well, remember, he also went through therapy. So I'm part of that, all of that coming through generation would have probably came out at that time, because without knowing that, they would have never been able to make that decision. You know what I'm saying? Him and his sisters and stuff. So I think his therapy, and the sisters might have went as well. I don't know. He only referenced him that he had went through a bad divorce as well. You know, he mentioned that. So, I mean, thank goodness. I mean, you know, go if you need it, but sometimes people don't know they need it.
They don't know why, or they don't know why they need it until they go.
Exactly.
And then that might be what he discovered through his therapy.
Yeah, and you look at this person who looks so successful and gregarious and full of confidence and self-sufficiency, who then says, you know, I felt really worthless.
Exactly. So sad. So sad. But now that he's learned these stories and he can see where he and his siblings can make a change.
And it just kept coming.
It
just kept coming.
Yeah, he was so sad. So I'm so glad that they went ahead and moved on to his paternal line, because that was a cool story. That was a really,
let's get to that.
Yeah, really cool story. He found a witch. They found
They
a
did.
They found a witch.
No, she wasn't
Accused
convicted.
witch.
Yes.
Well, to everybody at that time,
you,
they were
Mary.
witches, you know, but found an accused witch, which I thought was just amazing, you know, that it, and he said, well, wait a minute, this isn't Salem, you know, but it happened in different communities. You know, it was going on in England, it was going on in different communities around, you know, around the Eastern Seaboard. So the interesting thing is that they actually took her out to one of the, you know, Bermuda's got dunking booths. If you ever go to Bermuda, they have got some dunking booths where they used to put, not, you know, we're talking about Bermuda, where they've got them on display where they would put the accused witch in there and dunk her in the water.
Yeah.
What happened? You know, is she going to float? And, or, you know, is she going to drown? If she drowned, she wasn't a witch. Oh, wow, we killed somebody. You know, the thinking was crazy. Yeah. But his ancestor was actually tied up and thrown in the pond to see if she would float. I mean, and they showed a picture depicting a painting or something depicting what it would look like. Can you imagine? I can't even, the fear, the craziness, Mary, were you going to say something?
That whole point though, about, you know, she doesn't want to drown because she didn't want to drown.
Right.
She wants to drown. because
Right.
if she doesn't drown, then she'll be a witch.
And they'll kill her.
So
It's
And a
just
bird, a
doesn't even
snake,
make
yeah.
sense. Thank
just-
I
goodness
love-
for the community. You know what I mean? Thank
Yeah.
goodness for the community.
Yeah. Laura, what were you gonna say?
And her husband.
But before we go to that, what I
Yeah.
thought was really interesting was the expert there, because he basically said the same thing Mary just said. That's just, how did they come up with this?
Yeah, yeah.
And she explained the theological basis that they came, which I had never heard. I just thought they just came up with that out of thin air, like superstition, which I guess it still was. But the fact that they were saying if someone wasn't, that their beliefs at that time
yes.
was so much in good and evil, like
Right.
these two powers, that they baptized people with water. So they thought something evil would be rejected by water.
By the water. Yes, I've never heard that either. Thank you.
I
for
thought
bringing
that was fascinating.
yeah,
Yeah.
me too, because it kind of helps you understand, not that it, but you kind of
There's so
see
many
where they were
religious
coming
things.
from. See where they were
So many
coming from.
religious things that connect with water.
Mhm.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
revolves around the earth. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
It-
yeah,
yeah.
very interesting. But the great thing was that her husband, it took his life in his hands
He
and
did.
started a petition, and then
Yeah.
all the neighbors signed it saying, no, this is a good woman. This is a good
Mhm.
woman. None of us think she's a witch. She's not, she's good and she helps people, and on and on and on and on. And so she was found not guilty. So
But why would they not think if somebody was actually a witch that they would cast a spell and stop all of this? What if the craziness, you know what I mean? If they had so
I know.
much power,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
they would
I've
do
always wondered
something.
that too. And the
Yeah.
other thing that I thought was really interesting in this is they said, and I don't know the timing of that witch trial versus, I know it was the same year.
yeah, yeah.
But he said that
1692.
the jurors were aware of they were aware of the other trials, and he didn't
Right.
use hysteria. He didn't call mass hysteria. He used a different word, but I looked it up. Salem, Massachusetts to Stamford, Connecticut was 200 miles. I don't know how quickly news would have traveled,
Oh,
but it did almost seem like this was a more thoughtful community,
yeah.
that they had looked at what was going on. And so I thought that was fascinating as well, that they weren't as convicted, wrong word, they weren't as sure of their beliefs of, okay, someone said she cursed them, she must have done it. That they're
Right.
like, okay, we have to have some burden of proof other than you think that and he thinks that.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. What was really cool is the pond that,
Yeah.
she shows him, she goes, if you look out the window, you'll see what's left of the pond that they would have, tried to drown her in. How
Right.
cool is that to be able to walk
Yeah.
out and see this pond and think,
Yeah.
because I would be sitting there imagining what she may have been going through,
Yeah,
at
that would have
that
creeped
point.
me out.
That would have been something. And then they also sent him to a house that was
Mhm.
contemporary to the time when his ancestress would have lived there. And so he got to go through that and see some of the historical things that were there. I really enjoyed both of them, but I think he was so excited about everything. I mean, so disappointed, but so excited. I mean, he was enjoying every minute, I don't think I've seen somebody that excited for a while. Because they're excited, but sometimes it's like, okay, that's
Yeah.
cool. Okay, but he was like, what?
Yeah,
I know.
He was just really
He's
into it.
related to who was the guy a few years ago? He does the cervical cancer commercials. His mother died. He's an actor too. He has a wife and 2 kids, and he connected with he was real excited, just like
Shelley
that.
remembers all the episodes.
Yeah.
She remembers
Well,
everything.
because this one had Ruth Church in it, and I knew who Ruth Church
Oh,
was.
okay.
When he's
Okay.
going on a tree,
Yeah.
my mom and I looked at each other,
Right.
because he's on our tree.
How cool
And
is that?
he's the guy, hold on, he's with
It'll come to you. It'll come to you. Don't call all of us at
Got a Polish wife, if you'll remember the episode, and he talked about
I know,
his
like,
mom
I don't
had died and he
remember.
had 2 brothers.
I'm sitting here, everything she says, I'm Googling, and so far I've not gotten it.
Oh, that's too
Hold
funny.
on.
Laura's
He's
using
a
Google.
movie star, and he's on that current show where the black woman plays like a detective lady. It's a Rhonda.
Oh gosh,
John
I don't know.
Foley.
And everybody watching this is probably screaming at them.
Yeah.
So put it in the comments if you know who
I'm
Shelley's
sorry,
talking
you
about.
guys.
But
Hold
it's
on.
okay. It's okay.
I'm gonna find it. Hold
That's
on.
that is just fine. But yeah, I'm hoping that one of these days they
And you
will
know who it is.
show
Look
a
in the
lineage,
chat.
a tree, and I've got a person in there, and I can say, "Oh my gosh, I've got that person in my tree." Has anybody done that yet? And on the panel, have you seen
I haven't.
somebody
No.
or a
Seen
location?
anybody.
They've done
She was the
location.
first one.
Yeah,
This guy I'm thinking about was the first,
the first
one.
one. Yeah. that you-
Samuel Wardell. The dad to 2 brothers. Hold on. Come on, Laura. The
You're
dad
not
to
looking in the
2
chat?
brothers.
Oh
I
god,
can't even think of the lady.
that's too
I
funny.
think it's Scott Foley.
Yes,
She got it.
that's him. How did you remember that?
I wish I had a
How
prize.
did you remember that?
I didn't. I Googled
She
all
Googled
the
it.
words.
Well,
She Googled it.
what's the show he's on right now? Shonda Rhimes'
Okay,
show.
well, let's talk about this episode.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, he was very enthused because his ancestor was a guard for George Washington and
Yes.
all
Oh,
of
yes,
that
yes,
stuff.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
now you remember?
That's
Yeah,
that's so exciting. Yeah.
But I think it is good because I think for some of us, it's like, oh, they just got a celebrity and they're finding out this or that. But for some people that have never embarked on looking at
Yeah.
their family history, like it really is literally eye-opening. Like they get
Yeah,
like
It is.
because
Exactly.
they're discovering things that they never thought they never thought there'd be anything that interesting.
Anything that interesting because it's just my family.
They're all
Yeah.
interesting.
So cool. Anyway, how fun! How fun! I know
Lots
that
of fun.
we've got 2 more episodes in this season, so we will be back in a couple of weeks to do that, and we will also just be back with a regular episode of GenFriends. So it's not like we're gonna wait until those
And
come out.
Finding
So
Your Roots will be coming too.
January.
It's already
that's
announced that.
January and
January.
another season of
Relative
Relative
race.
Race is going to be coming up pretty soon. Yep, I don't know the date, and
I
so
still don't
Yeah,
have.
Exciting.
I haven't seen a date either.
Yeah, tell them they can't release it till we get swag.
right.
Yes.
We need some swag. Exactly. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, with that, we need to sign off, and and I hope everybody's enjoying watching these episodes, this Genealogy TV, because you can learn so much and you can get inspired.
Absolutely.
And just remember, it takes some work, and they've got a bunch of people behind the scenes that have been working on these for a long, long time. So don't get discouraged. Just find ways for you to learn and build your skills, and you can go back and find that you've got an ancestor on the Mayflower, or was on that boat in Bermuda, or maybe went through the witch trials or something like that. You can find these things, or maybe even more exciting things. You just have to keep at
Or
it.
even less, and that's good too.
And that's
Yeah.
good too. Just learning their stories, because their stories help you to know who you are.
That's
They really-
right.
They
Yeah.
help you to know who you are. So with that, we will say
And it
goodbye.
doesn't happen overnight. So
No, it doesn't.
what you see on TV,
Nope,
that
nope,
could have
nope,
been
nope.
a year or 2 years
Two.
of research. before they
Exactly.
got there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shelley. Well, with that, we will say goodbye, and we will see you next time on GenFriends. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.